Tonight, we check in with the poor man's Greg Gutfeld, George Clooney. Remember, he wrote a scathing op-ed prior to the election calling on Joe Biden to drop out? And this week, he took to CNN, the only place he's seen less than in his own movies, to gloat. God, I hope Jake Tapper doesn't plant his lips firmly on George's puckered ass.
George Clooney strutted toward the political arena as if it were a movie set, espresso in hand, designer loafers barely touching the ground. He looked ready to direct America's future from the patio of his Lake Como estate, until Greg Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly tag-teamed him like they were the headline act at a verbal WVE showdown. One moment, Clooney was delivering a pompous monologue with the wind in his hair. The next, he was being verbally airdropped back to his Italian villa, stunned, silenced, and politically scorched. What happened? Hollywood's favorite humanitarian flew too close to the microphone, and Gutfeld and Kelly brought the thunder.
What's the matter, George? Are the Hollywood roles getting a little hard to come by as you age and get decidedly more smug and self-congratulatory? I'm just asking. And chooses to finish this show by lecturing the audience on how journalism ought to be done. Speaking as Edward R. Murrow, he warns about the ongoing struggle for truth and integrity in the media. Truth and integrity. About the potential for the media to be manipulated and used for propaganda.
It's as if Clooney glanced at America's current chaos, soaring inflation, political gridlock, gas prices that make your wallet scream, and thought, you know what this nation needs? A monologue from a millionaire sipping wine under imported olive trees. Because nothing says unity like a man in a $20,000 suit, lounging beside a marble fountain, explaining democracy to the very people who can't afford the gas to drive to work. It wasn't just tone deaf, it was surround sound arrogance, piped through a Bluetooth speaker made of pure ego.
It was a civic duty. When I saw people on my side of the street not telling the truth, I thought that was time to...
Are people still mad at you for that?
Some people, sure.
Wow, if that's Clooney with makeup. Imagine what he looks like without it, huh?
And yes, a man once known for playing a brooding caped crusader is now auditioning for the role of America's conscience. Clooney wants to pivot from Hollywood royalty to national moral compass, as if box office receipts qualify you for geopolitical insight. But instead of applause, he got the kind of blowback usually reserved for bad sequels. Greg Gutfeld opened fire with sarcasm so sharp it could cut glass. Megyn Kelly followed with laser-focused rebuttals that left Clooney's speech in tatters. It was a takedown for the ages, one part roast, one part courtroom dissection, and entirely overdue.
So she and George get together and they start navel-gazing on stage about themselves, of course, and their vaunted profession, and how bad, how just terrible the media is, and had the following exchange.
What we do in this is we talk about the responsibility of journalists to hold truth to power, right? That's our goal. And so if you're doing that, and we don't tell people what to think when we show that montage at the end.
Clooney imagined himself as a philosopher-in-chief, delivering hope and unity with orchestral music swelling behind him. What he got was Greg Gutfeld cracking up like he just watched a blooper reel, and Megyn Kelly dissecting his argument like a surgeon holding a scalpel and a grudge. His self-important oration was less, I have a dream, and more, I have a vineyard. Gutfeld's laughter wasn't just mockery, it was a public service announcement. Hollywood, your halo is crooked.
Remember, Clooney's the same guy who held a star-studded fundraiser for Joe weeks before he dropped out and only called for him to quit after his disastrous debate. Clooney ignored concerns over Biden's age for years, only to magically come to the conclusion that he was demented when America finally saw what Clooney had been hiding. That's the problem with Dems. They're obedient shills for awful people, then pretend otherwise once voters see that they're full of. But remember, we were pointing out Joe's dementia before it was cool. We knew Biden was the worst president ever, which probably means Jimmy Carter died a happy man.
Gutfeld's response? Picture a comedian watching a TED talk delivered by a bottle of champagne. To him, Clooney's grandstanding was nothing more than vapid elegance wrapped in moral cosplay. Gutfeld ridiculed the entire spectacle like it was a Golden Globe speech gone rogue, long-winded, shallow, and utterly unaware. Then came the hypocrisy highlight reel. Clooney pontificating about climate change from the steps of his private jet, like Al Gore with a better tan. Gutfeld coined it perfectly: Malibu Messiah syndrome, where applause is confused for authority and luxury is mistaken for leadership. Clooney wasn't delivering policy, he was playing dress-up with democracy.
New nuggets are breaking. Tara Palmieri, who's got her own Substack and podcast now, she's been on the show, she got a copy and released a couple of the nuggets, and so did The Guardian. But hers was a really interesting nugget. And she's apparently in this book, they reveal that George Clooney saw Morning Joe one day, right after his op-ed, and Mika Brzezinski was suggesting that Barack Obama was behind the George Clooney op-ed. That was basically making Clooney seem like Obama's puppet.
Yeah.
Though Gutfeld didn't spell it out, his message was crystal clear. Clooney sounded like that guy at a dinner party who hasn't read a book since the Bush administration, but still insists he can fix the national debt between sips of imported Chardonnay. He mocked Clooney's political insight as being about as useful as spraying cologne on a leaking pipe. Then, for comedic garnish, he reminded the world that Clooney once starred in a film with a telepathic goat. If that's not a resume booster for public office, what is? Meanwhile, Megyn Kelly brought the intellectual sledgehammer. She wasn't there for comedy. She came with calm, ruthless logic, exposing Clooney's performance as just that, a performance. One delivered with polish, but no principle.
Party. I bet there's one person in particular he thinks is spectacular.
There's one person in particular I think is spectacular. There are a few who I think is levitating above that is Wes Moore. I like him a lot. I think he could be someone we could all join in behind. We have to find somebody rather soon. It's our job now to put together a proper team to stand up, because we're right now polling very poorly.
I love that. Levitating above, as opposed to sinking to the bottom, like his last movie.
Megyn Kelly approached Clooney's contradictions the way a forensic expert approaches a crime scene. Methodically, unflinchingly. Here stood a man who cries foul over emissions while flying private more often than most people check their email. A man who talks equality from a fortress secured tighter than a royal palace. Kelly didn't just expose the contradictions, she spotlighted them like opening night at the Hollywood Bowl. To her, Clooney isn't just a misguided voice. He's the billboard for elite disconnection, a carefully airbrushed avatar of everything wrong with celebrity activism. She questioned the networks that hand him a platform like he's Thomas Jefferson with a SAG card. The only constitution Clooney studied, she implied, was the one attached to his fitness app.
Here he is going on, this is to 60 last night, about, you mentioned his op-ed in the New York Times on Joe Biden, and why he did it. Such a selfless, brave act, Ben. Here he was.
I was raised to tell the truth. I had seen the president up close for this fundraiser, and I was surprised. And so I feel as if there was a lot of profiles in cowardice in my party through all of that.
Oh, wow.
And I was not proud of that. And I also believed I had to tell the truth.
That fundraiser where he saw Biden almost falling off the stage, where Obama came out to grab him, was June 15th. The debate was June 27th. It wasn't until July 10th, almost a month after he attended the fundraiser with him, that George Clooney finally wrote that op-ed after it became clear that Joe Biden wasn't stepping down. He's such a lie.
While Clooney levitated above the political discourse on a cushion of self-importance, Kelly remained on solid ground, armed with research and righteous disdain. She didn't target the man, she dismantled the myth. That belief that charisma, good bone structure, and a few golden globes somehow bestow foreign policy chops. And here's the twist. The audience didn't just agree, they erupted. Gutfeld's one-liners flooded social media like a tsunami of mockery. Memes plastered Clooney's face over inspirational posters with captions like, "Please stop talking." But Kelly's critique was surgical. She didn't deliver punchlines. She delivered perspective. With every calm sentence, she sliced through the script and exposed the soft underbelly of Clooney's political cosplay.
But in this new world of common sense, what does he align with? He might have way more in common with Trump than he is with the progressives. The question is, does he have the bravery to say that? I have no idea where he stands on the border, sanctuary cities, or trans extremism. How does he feel about the fires in LA? Is he happy with how it was handled by Mayor What's-Her-Face and Governor who's his name?
On her podcast, Where Smug Meets Surgical, Kelly placed Clooney's commentary under the microscope and didn't even flinch. She opened with that signature smirk and delivered the first jab. So, democracy from a hot tub in Lake Como? That's bold. Then she unraveled his rhetoric like a ball of overpriced yarn. She brought receipts, poll numbers, media trust scores, and examples of actual oppression that made Clooney's complaints look like journal entries from a confused influencer. And then came that glare, her signature, you can't be serious look. The kind that freezes debates mid-sentence. Clooney might have thought he was giving a TED talk. Kelly treated it like open mic night at the local Hypocrisy Lounge.
Julia Roberts, who outed herself not only as a leftist, which we knew, but as somebody who, and by the way, she's also a husband stealer. She stole the husband that she has right now in a reported affair. So, okay, maybe don't be the voice of the ad in which we talk about women betraying their husbands, because in the leftist view, marriages are not about honesty and talking about one's differences and agreeing to disagree on certain dicey issues, but they're about lying. And they believe this so strongly to put it in an ad. And her pal, George Clooney, who did something similar for another ad, same. You got Joe Biden out. How'd it work out for you? How'd that go? Maybe you should have said something a little...
But the best was yet to come. Kelly paraded Clooney's hypocrisies like floats at a 4th of July spectacle. She grilled him on his climate crusade, punctuated by frequent flyer miles that could circle the earth, and his hollow cries for unity, which conveniently excluded anyone right of center. To Kelly, Clooney's democracy only works when his side wins. When it doesn't, he retreats to his marble tub to lament the fall of civilization, usually with a wine glass and a flattering camera angle. She stripped the illusion. Clooney isn't a political voice. He's a luxury brand trying to rebrand as a revolutionary. He may look the part, but when you peel back the tuxedo, there's no plan, just posturing.
When he talks about cowardice, he waited a long time, but he should have the guts to maybe say that his friends in Hollywood, like John Boyd or Mel Gibson or Sylvester Stallone, who shared a risk, might have been right on a few things. He's starring in Glengarry Glen Ross, am I right?
No, it's Good Night and Good Luck.
Oh,
sorry,
never mind.
My fault.
I was going to say, they have tremendous respect for David Mamet. David Mamet is one of the most conservative people. So maybe instead of just sitting in silence, you should actually speak up for some of the people who shared the risk in Hollywood.
In her final assessment, Kelly didn't shout. She didn't need to. She exposed Clooney's political cosplay as little more than designer grandstanding, tailored for brunches in Beverly Hills and applause at award shows. She compared his moralizing to a recent trend in Hollywood, activists in Armani. Warriors in theory, but tourists in practice. When the real work starts, they vanish faster than a movie's opening weekend flop. Clooney, she said, represents the worst of this new breed. Not brave, not bold, just beautifully packaged condescension. Her takedown wasn't brutal, it was businesslike. She held up a mirror, stepped aside, and let Clooney's ego do the rest.
I think, this Johnny come lately, I was raised to be honest, is a bunch of BS. All right. Obama told him to do it. He sees himself as this extremely important person. I think he's an arrogant, condescending, smug individual who thinks that, he should be able to tell people in America and the Democrat Party, certainly, what they should and shouldn't do. This president, Joe Biden, is one of the most disastrous presidents that we've had in American.
And that's how George Clooney, the self-appointed philosopher king of Lake Como, got thrashed by a wisecracking newsman and a no-nonsense former lawyer. He arrived with a monologue and left with a pie in the face. Gutfeld swung with the comedic hammer. Kelly sliced with the scalpel of reason. The result? A public undressing of Hollywood elitism so thorough, even Clooney's espresso lost its foam. But this wasn't just about one actor's misstep. It was a reckoning with the entire celebrity industrial complex that believes applause equals insight. Clooney expected adoration. Instead, he got dismantled, reduced from global statesman to cautionary tale. Because in today's climate, real America doesn't want lectures from the Riviera. They want honesty, reality, and maybe, just maybe, a break from actors who mistake attention for enlightenment.